Mr. Blackmar, what do you think is happening in our industry that's both good and bad?
Well, we'll start with the bad. I think we certainly need to get more people playing the game. We have some challenges. I think that our society has changed, and we have some time constraint issues we need to solve so it doesn't take quite so long for people to play. I think that we need to make the game more of a family sport so we can have the whole family out there playing the game. There's different avenues that we can address it. Maybe introduce some new concepts as to how many holes a round of golf is. Where we play 9 holes or 6 holes or different things, different ideas, but to try to get as many people out enjoying the game as we can. And on the good side of it, on the other side of that is I think that technology has really helped the average player enjoy the game more. I mean, it's a hard game, and there's been things said about it on a tour level, how it's changed the face of the game, but I also think for the average player, it's changed the face of the game in a good way. It's made it a little easier to keep the ball in play, a little easier to hit the ball solid, a little easier to do some things that I think that are very positive.
Mr. Hale, have you talked with Jack about his approach in playing 12 holes and increasing the size of the hole and so on?
Well, not to Jack specifically, but certainly the idea has some traction out there. There's a golf course that we are, if it ever comes around to being designed, will be a 6-hole loop of 12 holes. With the thought being that with time constraints, as Phil just said, that maybe two things about time constraints. I think we as professionals are setting a bad image in how long it takes us to play a shot. And that backs up right down to junior level, and certainly in college you can see it where the kids are told take as much time as you want, and it takes 6 hours plus to play around the golf. Well, no one has that time anymore. With the soccer moms and the baseball dads and all the demands on time in the family unit on weekends and those hours that one could be playing golf, we've got to accelerate that time frame. And I agree with Phil. We need to somehow make this more of a family game and make it a more condensed, crisper event for them all to enjoy. Because I think golf can teach kids a lot about themselves. It should be a learning experience. They learn self-esteem. They learn self-reliance. They learn that they have to rely upon themselves and be accountable to themselves for those kinds of issues that they might confront in everyday living. So I think we need to take it from a fun time as well as a learning experience and some life skills.
Hale, as a golf course architect, do you see any change in the basic philosophy of designing courses evolving, or?
Well, yes, I'm going to kind of stay with what I've always felt is that the game should be fun, first of all. We have to get away from building monuments unto ourselves. I think as designers and architects, we have to build to the golfing population, and that may mean less of what you thought was good, maybe less of that, maybe less watering so the ball runs out. Maybe we don't go for the beautiful green grass, which we all love to see, but perhaps in cost savings, or
yes,
we are allowing the ball to run. Maybe we don't have as many bunkers. Maybe we learn a different style of play that right now it has to be in the air because things are so soft and green and lush, and that's the way we're trying to teach is from A to B in the air. Well, there's nothing wrong with running along the ground, which a lot of people do anyway.
And a lot of us learned to play under those conditions, and it was
exactly
a good way to learn, wasn't
exactly.
it?
And I think, as I mentioned earlier, if you have an 18-hole golf course, maybe you put it in 3 6-hole loops. So people have the opportunity to play just 6 holes or just 12 rather than the traditional 9 and 18. Or if a golf course starts at 1 and you don't finish until 18, I think that's sort of a dinosaur. We have to kind of get away from that mentality and grow the game through the family unit as a crisp time, less time consuming, so they can do more things on a weekend and when they have that time together than just one endeavor.
Phil, give us an example. You talked about technology. Give us an example or two. Obviously the ball has changed, but What else do you think, in a technology standpoint, has helped the game get easier?
Well, the driver, in particular, with the much larger head, gives you it's like playing tennis with a longer racket and a bigger head. You give somebody a bigger sweet spot, and it's easier to make solid contact. I think perimeter weighting has helped people hit the ball a little bit straighter and find the golf course a little bit easier. If you don't believe so, go back and hit a wooden driver and see how you do. I think those are aspects of it.
How about the wedges? Do you think that we can improve people's play with wedges and learning a little more about how to use them?
I think learning how to use them is more important. Yeah. I haven't seen a big change in the design of wedges. You know, there's been a lot of grooves going back and forth and different things, but I think that's one area that folks could really improve upon when we play, and I know Hale would say the same thing, when we play in select shot format pro-ams and you drive your team down there to within 75 yards of the green. Invariably, when you get up to hit last, there's not a ball in the green yet, you know. And so if you could help folks learn how to hit the short shots, but instead everybody wants to go hit the long shots. But I think that's an area where people have the best opportunity to improve.
Hale, you've actually played, obviously, in a number of pro-ams. Do you, if you could say one thing to the average player, which would be probably a 15 to a 25 handicapper, that you feel would help most of them play better, what would it be?
Well, I see time and time again. The three things I see more often than not, and there's lots of little things, but the three things, number one is their alignment. They always have poor alignment, and that alignment could encompass body posture, but let's just say alignment where they're aimed.
Okay.
Secondly is they never take enough club. Rarely do they take enough club. The standard measure is, well, I hit a 7-iron 150 yards one time. Well, that one time might have been downwind, downhill, and that becomes the measure for going uphill into the wind too.
Hit 10 yards in front of the green and rolled
so
over the green, right?
They use very poor judgment in club selection. Rather than taking a longer club and trying to keep the tempo and things more in control, they try to guerrilla it. And the third thing is around the greens. As Phil alluded to, the short game really is non-existent with a lot of amateurs. They could be much better at a game where they can learn to chip, they can learn to putt better, but they spend far more time hitting the long ball than working on the short game. And there's where I see a lot of bad judgment calls around the greens and looking at greens and how to read them. Those three areas right there, if they would address those just a little bit each time, they would get better results immediately.
Mr. Blackmar, I've seen you teach the short game, and you're an absolute genius. And what do you see that we could do in the short game area that Hale has talked about that would help the average person develop their skills to something they could do at home?
Well, you can practice any of it at home. Whether you don't need a golf ball. First off, if you want a ball, you can take wiffle balls and use wiffle balls. You can do it on a piece of carpet in the garage. You can do it in your house, inside your house, and learning simply how to return the club down with the shaft leaning the proper direction. You see so many high handicappers, the average person, try to flip the ball up in the air. If you just learn how to make solid contact, how to make the ball hit the middle of the face, and if you get comfortable with that, if the average person knew that they could hit the ball solid around the green and get the ball in the air, they would be so much better already. And it's so simple to work on that, and you can do that at home. I think we could help the average person by trying to define, why is it you play golf? What is it you want out of golf? Do you just want to go out and see how far you can hit it, or do you want to shoot a number? Are you interested in what you shoot? And if you are interested in what you shoot, hey, this is the area that you can have the biggest impact on your game in the shortest amount of time with the least amount of effort. And I think if we can help them understand that and understand how to do that, I think their scores will come tumbling down and they'll enjoy the game even more.
Well, I think the Southern California section has done a lot to increase the talent level of our teachers. But Hale, if you could give any kind of suggestion to our teachers helping not the young kids who are trying to be tour players, but the average players, other than the things that you talked about, what would you tell our teachers to try to spend more time in developing their skills to a higher level?
But I think people, again, I'm speaking from a playing professional, seeing generally through the pro-am, through the eyes of a pro-am, seeing the regular amateur body out there playing, I see poor judgment. As I mentioned earlier, I see a club selection, and they don't judge well. They don't make the right decisions. As far as execution-wise, I think they're too interested in, as Phil says, hitting the long ball rather than maybe hitting the short ball and keeping it under control. And that could come back to judgment. I think sometimes we get too specific with what you're trying to be taught rather than a bigger umbrella. Let's talk something that's more simple and understanding to make sure that those building blocks by which we build our game are better understood before we elevate into something more specific.
See, I agree with you, Hale. I think that what we hear on television with the announcers so often about what the tour players are doing, the average person is trying to jump in his shoes and do things that they're not physically able, don't have the skill level, nor the time to develop those skills. And I feel many times it's intriguing them to pursue something that doesn't in their best interest and doesn't fit their priorities.
That's right. These are finely tuned machines, these players coming onto the tour now. They've been at it a while. They're very sensitive to one little change in their swing. They're very sensitive to that. The average player cannot feel that, just not understand the concept. So let's teach them how to have good, solid fundamentals first, and then build from there, rather than trying to get into the newest and sexiest cliche, the word of the week, the lesson that seems to be the angle they draw on the monitor. I think that's sometimes beyond the capabilities of our average player.
I think you misuse the word sometimes. Most of the time. But I think all of us are concerned about the well-being of the game in so many areas, but look what it's given us. I was talking to Arnold the other day on the phone after his Charlie Rose appearance. Did you happen to hear Arnold?
No, I didn't.
And he handled it beautifully, and so I had to call and tell him how nicely he did. But I said, Arnold, as famous as you are, nobody had ever heard of you if it hadn't been for golf. And so all of us want golf to continue and have the opportunity to let so many people enjoy the game, what it's given us.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thanks for being here today,
You bet,
Hale.
Jim. Thank you so
added
much.
a lot to it. Thank you, Mr. Phil.
Yes,
for
sir,
being here and
Coach.
what you've done for golf.
Pleasure.
Always proud of you.
Pleasure.